Welcome to tonight's talk. The hour is upon us. It is that 7 o'clock, and it's lovely to welcome you all to be part of this talk this evening. My name is Rachel, and I am one of the committee members of the Marble Hill Friends. And it is a real delight to work with a fantastic team at King Street Vets, and also to welcome our speaker this evening. Dogs are an incredible part of the life of Marble Hill, as are the wonderful people around and those who use this beautiful 66-acre park within which stands the most incredible free-to-enter Georgian villa. And we are very, very lucky to be able to have this within our community, to be able to offer events, but also to be able to celebrate those who call the park their own, whether they be two-legged, four-legged, six-legged, or even eight-legged. We are very, very lucky to work with the King Street Vets, who've been incredibly generous to support this talk, and the money raised from this that's going to the Friends will be going to support making sure the clock works on the top of the cafe. So an incredibly a good cause, but also we're talking about a fantastic charity. So I'm going to pass you on to Carmen, who is a vet at King Street Vets. Thank you, Carmen, for being with us, and thank you to the King Street Vets team.
Thank you, Rachel, for a very effusive introduction. Well, I won't keep you long because we're all very excited to hear from Alan Parton, the founder and vice chair of Hounds for Heroes, who's going to tell us about his four-legged friends and their exceptional stories. Very excited to be with you. I'll just briefly say, yes, I am the practice owner at King Street Vets. We set up on the High Street in May, and we've really enjoyed meeting all the four-legged friends that we've made in Twickenham, and we've had a few exceptional stories, although I'm sure probably nothing as exceptional as what Alan's about to tell us. So I think Alan has an introductory video, so I'm going to disappear from the screen and let Alan take us forwards.
I'm Alan Parton. I was serving in the Royal Navy in 1991. I was a weapons electrical engineering officer, happily married with two young preschool children. My wife at the time was a civilian nurse, and I'd not long had my commission, and life was as good as it could get. Then in 1991, the first Gulf War reared its ugly head, and I found it very, very difficult to be driving a desk back in Bath and not being on a ship at the pointy end doing the job that I'd been trained for all my life. And I'd served for 26 years. And then one day I rung Navy drafting and said, please, can I go to war? And you can imagine the guy on the end of the phone thought there was an absolute lunatic there who kept ringing up almost every day. But by the time I got permission to go, the naval war was over. The Iraqis, the oil rigs had been taken back, all their boats had been sunk, and there wasn't really a naval role. And my role was purely, and it's not claiming to be bomb disposal or anything like that, my job was to go down and take apart munitions that had been supplied so we knew how we could counter them in the future. We sailed from Portsmouth. I waved goodbye to my children on the round tower as we sailed. And we had a bit of a captain who was like Scotty out of Dad's Army. So I hope most of the listeners will understand where I'm coming from. He really was that sort of character, morning, sir, we're doomed, Mr. Parton, it's a really sunny day, sir, but we're doomed, but he said, I want you in my cabin to have a talk. So as many of us could be spared, went to his cabin, and we were trying to get a big grey ship out of Portsmouth Harbour, but as it happened, it's not without its navigational hazards, and there was very few of us who could be spared. But to cut a long story short, as we were sailing out, the skipper turned around to us and said, right, gentlemen, 8 of us won't be coming back. And we all sort of laughed at him and thought, that's not quite as we imagined it would be. But there was only 6 of us in the room to start with. So, watch the needles go by out the porthole. And we thought, well, he could have waited to the Suez Canal for that moral tending beast. But I was involved in an operational incident that left me in hospital for 5 years. I woke up, I couldn't remember being married, the birth of my children, I couldn't read, write, walk or talk. And to this day, those memories have never come back. I can't remember Sandra, my wife, pre-golf, all my children. And, I'd lost 50% of my life history. I didn't deal with it very well, and I hate to admit it, but it is part of my life story. While I was in Headley Court, I had 2 major attempts at suicide. They weren't cries for help. They were really feeling that I'd let Queen and country down, and it was quite a hard place to be. But they were very on the ball at Headley Court, and they were never going to let it happen. And now looking back, I always know that suicide is a very permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I had to pay for what I did, because one day I had to sit down and tell the children what I'd done. And when your 8-year-old daughter turns around and says, well, Dad, didn't you love us? Is the day you pay the piper. Eventually, you know, I came out of hospital after 5 years. The British Legion had brought us a house that we could rent, and we were all stuck together in a very tinderbox situation, because part of the head injury I'd suffered had robbed me of love, hate, happiness and sadness. And you know, the social services were very worried about the tinderbox situation at home. And to cut a long story short, they arranged for me to go to daycare in Portsmouth. The bus would pick me up every day and take me into daycare, and I'd do something at daycare. To this day, I couldn't tell you what I did. But saying that, in a pub quiz, I'm cracking at classical music. I can answer some really odd questions when they come. I think Handel's Firework Music was the one that won the quiz last time. But I mean, I was in daycare, you know, and then eventually the bus would bring me home in the evening. And looking back now, it certainly wasn't for my benefit. But anyway, once that had happened, you know, that was my life until I was 65. The children tumbled into school age. My wife couldn't go to work, back to nursing, because she was my carer. And I was going to daycare. And then one day, my daycare bus didn't pick me up, and I had to go, you know, and at the time Sandra had become a volunteer puppy parent, and those are lovely families, a bit like guide dogs, who will take a puppy at 8 weeks, attend puppy class every week, learn the lesson of the week, then come home, reinforce it, then go back the next week, show you you've learned that, then learn the next lesson. And you do that for 14 months. And then sadly, these very stoic people have to give that puppy back for advanced training. And that's a hard shout. But we're quite unscrupulous in the assistance dog world, because when they come in crying, tears pouring down their eyes, we always sneak another one in as they're going out the door. And they'll always say, no, I can't do another one. And you say, that's okay. You know, we'll leave it somewhere where someone will adopt it. And how you can't do that. And they go out with a second and eventually a third. They're a bit wiser around about the 4th dog. But I mean, my wife had never had a dog in her life. She applied on the Monday. On the Tuesday, they came out and vetted the house. And on the Friday, she was delivered a little dog called Ferdy. And, you know, her life was puppy class, the children's school, and mine daycare. And it was one day the daycare bus just didn't come. And for whatever reason, to this day, we don't know. But I had to go with her to puppy class. And I went into puppy class, was wheeled into the corner. A lot of people come up to say hello to me, thinking I'd come to get a dog, and that wasn't the case, because I was just away with the fairies. But that morning there was a little 11-month-old Labrador up there called Endal, who had health problems in his front legs, and he also had an attitude problem, i.e. when you asked him to do something, he wouldn't. He wasn't really fired up to be that dog that delivered. And you know, when you dropped something and said, can you pick it up, he would look at you and say, well, you've dropped it, you pick it up. And if you went to go through a door and say, can you tug open the door, he'd look at you and say, well, you know, you open the door, you know, if you want to go through it. And you know, his attitude really wasn't that strong. So you know, he was what we call a career change dog. We don't have foul dogs in the assistance dog world. He was definitely a career change dog. But mind you though, if someone says you're career change, worry, because it could have a dual meaning. But this dog was there just on the floor, just chilling out, being made more sociable, ready to be rehomed. And that morning he saw something on the floor, trotted across the training centre, picked it up and put it in my lap without being prompted, without being asked. And he didn't get a reward. He didn't get praise. He just got the stone wall of this mute in the wheelchair. But he didn't give up. He went to the mock-up supermarket and took a tin off the shelf, brought it back, put it in my lap. Didn't get a reaction, went to the grooming parlour, took brushes and things off, brought it back to my lap. And he was literally clearing the training centre of anything he could find just to get that reward, praise or whatever. But he got the stone wall. But eventually, just before I disappeared under this mountain of stuff, the brain switched on and I smiled for the first time. And that night he came home with me and stayed for 13 years. And when I couldn't talk, he learned sign language. He learned to put me in the recovery position. He even learned to operate a cash point machine by putting the card in, taking the card, the money, the receipt out. And he just kept learning and learning and learning. And one of the things he was doing for me, and I hope all of you know where I'm coming from, if there's an animal on the planet that can teach you lost emotions, I genuinely believe it's a dog. Because, you know, every day he helped me regain those emotions. Every day he made me laugh by doing something goofy. be. You know, he always used to be at the side of the bed at 6 o'clock every morning, and even if I didn't want to wake up, he would be there at 6 o'clock. And my moment, my eyes open, my legs were dragged out, the wheelchair was put there, we're off downstairs we went. For 13 years I ate cornflakes. God, I hated cornflakes. That every morning we'd open the cupboard and get the cornflakes out, and he was just there. And when I couldn't talk, he learned sign language, like hat, razor, gloves, coat. He learned 1,000 commands of signing, and though I couldn't communicate with my family, I could with him. And you know that every day was fun with him. You didn't have time to feel sorry. But he also taught me to hate, because I absolutely hate people that are cruel to animals. And I think, you know, I'm talking to an audience that really gets that. But he also taught me to love, because one day I was at an event saying I don't remember being married, and this very special woman touched me on the shoulder and said, "No, Papa, you don't remember the first time, but you will the second." And 18 years ago, my wife and I got remarried, and out of 98 of us that were badly injured in 91, only 5 marriages survived today. And you know, when we said for better and worse at the front of the church the second time, we were a lot wiser, and we were very committed to the future. Can't change the past, but we can certainly take control of the future. And Endal was there as my best man. He, you know, we went on, he taught me an awful lot. And with my children, they were very embarrassed about me because I didn't communicate or whatever. But on a daily basis, he was helping me along. And then one day I was signing him something, and I burped. And he thought that was so exciting to get some noise in our silent world. He was literally running around the walls. And then the next time I tried to communicate, and it was grunted noises. Grunted noises become stuttered sentences become sentences, and the rest is history. And I probably think the wife wants to take the dog off me just to shut me up at times, but he was taking me on that journey. And though 5 years with a speech therapist said he'll never talk again, that dog just didn't give up on me and was the key to the communication, to the point that my children were so pleased I was asked to go and speak at their school, you know. And I'm very proud the Naval Charity stepped in and funded them at some cracking schools, you know, to give them an opportunity, because they'd really been through it. Dad had come back, but it wasn't the dad they knew. And, you know, and Endal was, you know, helping me along the road. He learned to operate a cash point machine one day by putting the card in, taking the cards and money receipt out. He was the first dog on the London Eye. He was the first dog to travel in the cabin of an aircraft of a UK airline. He was doing so much, and he was even voted Dog of the Millennium. And that dog was just amazing. And my children were proud, you know, to speak at their schools was a real homecoming for this dad. You know, I hadn't mean to be the rotten dad. It wasn't the dad that sailed away, and it isn't the dad presents today. But this dog was taking me on an amazing journey, you know, and he taught me to love, to hate, to laugh. And, you know, we just had such a wonderful time. And he actually saved my life one night at Crufts. We were hit by a hit-and-run car and left unconscious in the car park hotel of a hotel. And it was all caught on CCTV, so I can't do it justice. But he pulled me into the recovery position when he woke up, covered me with a blanket, found my mobile phone, which had jettisoned off under a car, pulled it back, was seen pushing it in my face. You can see him howling for help, couldn't wake me. And ironically, the canal running by the Birmingham Hotel had 4 inches of ice on the surface. So that's how cold it was that night. And had he not acted, I probably wouldn't be here today. And he went to the hotel and raised the alarm. And in the Second World War, they had a very special medal called the Dickey Medal, which is the Animal Victoria Cross. It can only be issued in wartime, but that dog was awarded it for saving my life in peacetime, in the aftermath of conflict, you know. And he was there, and when the ambulance came, he wouldn't leave me. And when we got to Birmingham Hospital, he wouldn't leave me. And he was just that amazing sort of chap that just put me first every time. And we'd both taken the impact of the vehicle. You know, we then had 13 lovely years together. We had the opportunity of writing a book called Endal, and we launched it at Crufts, and all Endal had to do at his 10 to 13 was just autograph his book with an ink stamp, and for that he got a biscuit. And he was still a bit of a bolshy guy, and he sort of said, well, all I've got to do that is do that, and I get a biscuit, you know, sort of bring it on. So he had 4 lovely days there autographing the books, and in fact he autographed anything. If you were bald, you got him autographed. If you know, had white trousers on, that was autographed, anything, you know. And if you look at the NEC now, you think Banksy has the forerunner on wall art. Endal's autograph is still around the NEC in Birmingham. But, you know, we'd had a lovely couple of days up there. We'd launched the book. We came back home. We decided, Sandra and I, to go into Portsmouth to do some catch-up shopping. We left him at home to have a rest. Not that he'd actually done anything except eat a lot of biscuits. But when we were in Portsmouth, my son ran and said, I think Endal's fallen downstairs, which we thought was a bit odd because he wasn't the dog that would do anything unless asked to still. But anyway, we rushed home, and when we got home, he was on the sofa, all legs up in the air like an upside down table. And We couldn't find anything wrong with him, but he definitely was sniffing a lot more. And someone once described us as a real life Wallace and Gromit, the hapless owner and the clever dog. I think they mean that affectionately, but he wasn't right. But I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but he wasn't right. And then the very next night, all became clear. He had a fit on the sitting room, and that knocked his balance. And as he'd grown with the health problem he had, this joint problem, that had become arthritic, and losing his balance, he didn't have a good leg in each corner, and I had to make that awful decision that night, realising the first fit he had that I wasn't there had knocked his eyesight, hence the compensatory sniffing, to compensate for that. And I rung John. I'd become vice chairman of another assistance dog organisation, and John was our trustee vet. And I asked John, would he come round and do what had to be done? And John said, well, I can't come round to the morning. So that night I sat down and cuddled Endal, thanked him for what he'd done, the journey we'd been on, what an amazing life we'd had. We'd even met the Queen, had private audiences with the Queen. He'd done so much for me and my family. But, he wouldn't rest that night. And it wasn't till I dragged myself up onto the sofa that he sort of looked at me and went, yes, now I can rest. And in the morning, he tried to pick up his food bowl to give it to me. He couldn't. He desperately tried to pass me the cornflakes. And though I hate cornflakes, I would have loved a packet delivered that morning. But when John came and Endal was put into my lap and he was put to sleep, he gave me the final bit of the missing puzzle. My life was like a jigsaw puzzle smashed asunder in the Gulf in '91. And every day that dog had gone off and found a missing bit of the puzzle. And when he took his final breath in my lap, he gave me something I didn't see coming, because I cried like a baby, an emotion I hadn't been able to touch since '91. I'm not when my children were hurt, my wife was sad, I couldn't touch that emotion. But in that last breath, he gave me love, hate, happiness, and sadness. And in the corner of our sitting room, we had a 9 or 11-month-old Labrador called EJ, Endal Jr., who loved Endal to pieces, used to terrorise him, but he came over, kissed him goodbye, went to the corner, picked up the lead and collar and took over. And he was able to do everything Endal could do, even to the point if I fall unconscious in the bath, he knew to pull the plug out, keep my head above water. He had his own Oyster card for the London Underground. He was so savvy and so quick, but he had a good teacher, and that dog sort of picked up the baton and ran with it. And I know Endal will be looking down at great pride at what EJ had done. And for 14 years, EJ has been at my side. But sadly, dogs don't live as long as us. And I lost the faithful Guy in March. But I had brought on another guy called E.T., who stands for Endal III. And he's now an 18-month-old yellow Labrador who is a real character. But he too can do anything those older guys can do. I've just got to work on the maturity and reducing the level of excitement. But he is an amazing chap. And he has just taken me on that continuing journey. I had the privilege of being the face of the British Legion Poppy Appeal, and on my British Legion poster, it said there are over 900,000 injured servicemen and women in the country today. And I realised if a dog could save my life, my marriage, and bring me back to my children, more servicemen and women needed to have that to them. And I wanted to find out how many servicemen and women actually had an assistance dog, and that number was 5, not having a guide dog or a hearing dog, but 5 had an assistance dog. And then I tried to find out who had the average assistance dog in the United Kingdom. Where are all the dogs going? Who is that client? So another study was done, and we found out it was a 48-year-old woman in a wheelchair with MS. My mum had MS, so I'm not picking on the disability, but a lot of the task work for the dog was very domesticated, opening a washing machine, doing shopping, helping in the house. And I realised that wasn't going to appeal to injured servicemen and women, because they look at disability different. Doesn't mean they're more disabled, but they're doing the Invictus Games. Guys are going up Everest minus arms and legs. Guys are rowing the Atlantic minus limbs and things. And having an assistance dog didn't appeal to them, because they saw it as disability, not ability, and problems, not solutions. So a group of us got together at HMS Collingwood in Fareham, a tri-service establishment, Army, Navy, RAF, and we decided we would set up an organisation that was particular to us, Hounds for Heroes. I had that name in my head. We realised that we weren't going to exclude another group of heroes in our community, and I hope you all agree, but policemen, firemen and paramedics needed to be in that group of people we were there to help. And to us, a lot of those members are ex-services. You tumble out the emergency services and become firemen, policemen and paramedics. And sometimes you'll see policemen with their Falklands ribbons on their stab vests and things if you look really closely, in their military insignia. So it was important to us, that's what we should do. And the other thing that was important to me me, I was paying £80 a month food, £80 a month insurance, and on a war pension, I was struggling. So at Hounds for Heroes, I asked that wonderful, initial group of trustees whether we could fully fund the cost of the dog. And they all agreed. So we pay the food, the veterinary costs, and the insurance. There is no cost to the client, whether you're a captain, sergeant, colonel, lieutenant, private. We fully fund the cost of the dog. And we do that for the reason that we want to safeguard the dog. If we give the dog the best food throughout its life, then hopefully that will solve skin issues and other issues. And if we, are prepared to take the dog to the vet on a Saturday night when it could be time and a half or out of hours, it doesn't matter to us because we want the dog to get the best treatment. And I'm of the belief, and I have, and all of you probably experience this, if you look after your animals, you will be so well rewarded. And certainly in the assistance dog world, that's really important to us. We're not part of the NHS, we're not part of the MOD, we are dog trainers, and primarily they are our welfare. We decided early on that we would train for 2 years training, which will get shorter as we get more established, and then they do 8 years with the client. And that was really important to us, that that the public see the dogs retire at 10, quite fit and healthy and able to do what they do. But they will, and then we can, with that timing, we know when the dog's been with the client for 6 years, we can start doing more aftercare visits to see what the dog is really doing, because we are finding we send the dogs out with a tool of experiences and skills, but they're learning so much more that when we go out on the final sort of visit to see what the dog's doing, we have to come back to the factory and sort of say, how are we going to produce a dog that can do that? But we go back and we keep training the new dog to work with that discipline, new equipment in the house or whatever. And one of the dogs we got, Rookie, if you have no arms, can put keys and pens in your mouth very accurately. He can move paralyzed limbs around, so if your arm falls off your wheelchair, he'll gently pick it back up for you. And if you've lost your face because you walk for a minefield and look down, you don't only lose legs and lower limb, you actually can lose your chin on your face. And he will work to an electronic voice box and knows 938 electronic commands, 98% accurate, which is pretty good, but very patient, very, very listening. So we set up Hounds for Heroes. We got a building in Hampshire, and though I wanted it to be the Central Midlands to be able to reach the audience from all around the United Kingdom, we managed to find this building in Hampshire. And though it wasn't where I wanted, we're 2 miles from Petersfield railway station, a train every half hour up to London Waterloo. We've got an A3, which has got the longest tunnel in the United Kingdom through it, to get to the M25 and the motorway system. And we're near Southampton Airport, that gives us Edinburgh, Glasgow, Liverpool, Leeds, Manchester, Belfast, Aberdeen, Inverness and Exeter. So, clients can get to us. And ironically, we're the only county in the land that has a Navy, Army and Air Force in it, which is, if we want a Chinook in the field for a picture, they'll send one down from Odeon. It does upset the farmer because his sheep go bowling down when that blade comes. If we want a tank, the Army will send one down from Aldershot for a back shot for something. The Navy's still resisting coming in 20 miles inland with a big battleship, and the Royal Marines still can't find us, but we'll leave them to their own. A little bit of banter there. But we got a training centre, we got it kitted, and then we started producing our squadrons of dogs. Each squadron has 4 in it, though in the beginning we had squadrons of 6. Each has a military related names. The squadron 1 was Flanders, Colonel, Monty. One of the dog was called Red 4, and he was named after John Eggins, the Red Arrows pilot that lost his life at Bournemouth. He sadly on the air display died. And though the money was raising for us, I wanted it desperately to go to the Royal Navy Association. But once money is raised for you, you can't send it somewhere else. So we asked his widow and the Red Arrows whether we could name a dog in memory of him, and they came up with the name Red 4. And we also had a Royal Marine whose family lives very close to where we do the training, Richard Hollington, and he was a Royal Marine, the 300 servicemen killed in Afghanistan. Not a proud thing to have. And his mum said, could we have a dog called Yomper, which was yomping across the Falklands? And we got Yomper on board. So all our names are quite significant. We're now up to Squadron 14, and we've had the girly names have been quite difficult. I don't think I mean that sexistly, but we wanted some names. I mean, I've run out of naval ships: Cleopatra, Hermione, Aurora. We've gone through most of those, but recently we've had one called Fleur, and that was named after the first female firefighter killed in active duty. And we've also had one called Alice after a paramedic that was killed on a traffic accident on the way to a shout. And all our names are very, very significant. And we've placed dogs with a serving police officer, a paramedic and a fireman, and obviously Army, Navy and Air Force. The dogs are going out the door, and we've produced 27 partnerships now, which we're very proud of for being such a small organisation. Sadly, we have lost some dogs through cancer, and we've lost clients as well because of their injury. It's inevitable they might not have a full life, but the dogs have really stepped up to the plate. And you don't have to be blown up in war or have a traumatic injury to have a Hounds for Heroes dog. We've got one chap with MS, and as his condition is getting worse, the dog is picking up the workload, which is remarkable to see. And it's almost like there's a stasis, though he isn't struggling anymore because the dog is picking up the workload. And that's quite important to us. And equally, we've got a chap with Parkinson's, again, whose condition is going downhill because you can't arrest that. But, the dog is able to do more and more and more. And hopefully when we get the successor dog in there, there won't be a drop off of that ability. If anything, there'll be a new infused whatever. And that probably leads in, what do we do with the dogs when they retire or come to that 10 years? Well, they can remain with the client if they want. A family member can adopt the dog if they try and get a successor dog, or we have a list of people who want a £53,000 dog that comes when it's called, toilets on command, goes where you want, shuts anything you've left open and picks up anything you've dropped, which my wife says men and boys can't do, but our dogs can, and we're proud of that. So we're getting good at what we're doing. We're rolling up. Everything's coming together now. Obviously, with COVID, we had to sort of mothballs the charity for a while, but we were able to do aftercare with the Zoom and such like as we're on tonight. And we've managed to maintain connection with all our partnerships. But our aim is, when the new dogs go out, is to place better and better dogs. So when the client gets a new dog, they will see the improvement. Not that there was anything wrong with the old dog, but we hope our methodology, our training the dogs to be thinking dogs more so than obedient dogs, is really important to us. So when I fall unconscious, my dog knows to put me in the recovery position, to cover me with a blanket, to hit the emergency phone. If no response, open the window and bark to a neighbour for help. If no response, go and get help. So that's really important to us, but that's particular to me, and that's really important. But every client has their own level of disability. And really, that's why I'm in the wheelchair, why I have a lovely dog. I would have had him in shop, but he snuck off next door to watch the television, which is typical of ET. There'll probably be some vet program on his watching or something or other. But that's why I'm in the wheelchair. That's why I normally have a dog by my side, and that's why there's an organisation called Hounds for Heroes. And my old granddad was a canny old sod. He used to say to me, "No one knows you're an idiot till you open your mouth." So on that note, I'll conclude and open the floor to any questions. And if anyone's got any questions, happy to answer them.
So Alan Leon has asked, how do we help with fundraising for Hounds for Heroes, which is an excellent question. Yeah,
for me, anyone can do anything, and I'd probably be slapped on the head by my fundraiser, community fundraiser, but I still believe it's 1 million people giving you £1 is important than given from the heart, as lots of big donations. But really, I'm here tonight. One of the greatest things, the most rewarding things all the listeners and viewers can help with, is letting people know we're here. Because near you, you've got to work out the statistics of nearly 1 million injured servicemen and women. And I don't have the figure for injured policemen, firemen and paramedics. But to me, it's really important that we reach these people. And there's always a perception we're only interested in those injured today, in Afghanistan. And for me, the important thing is remembering those injured in the Falklands, in Northern Ireland, in the First and Second Gulf War, which are today's news, tomorrow's fish and chip paper. But, I always say to people, when the guns go quiet on the battlefield, the battle with disability, trauma and bereavement just begin. So, yes, you can donate online and such like, but the greatest gift you could ever give to any of us at Hounds for Heroes is let people know we're here. Because there are a lot of people stuck behind a front door, and as pet owners, it's an excuse to go out. It's an excuse to engage. It's a reason to talk to people. And I get, when I go out in the wheelchair, people don't say move out of the way of the man in the wheelchair. They say move out of the way with the man with the dog. And that's quite significant and quite important. And it's quite nice to be seen like that I'm not defined by the wheelchair, but I've got this cracking, crazy dog at my side, which everyone adores. And I'm thinking, how does he do it? But, yes, can donate online in answer to your question. But to me, the greatest thing you can do is spread word about what we do, that we are here, we have the fire in our belly to place dogs. And as you can see, we've got 27. The gap between nearly 1 million is quite big, but we're willing to make it happen. And we can if people know about us, and the rest will fall in place.
That's lovely, Alan. There are a couple of questions, both of which ask what breeds do you use for your hounds, and are there certain breeds that make better assistance dogs?
We use Labradors and Golden Retrievers. Now, when I was a vice chairman of Canine Partners, we did a study to find out what dogs come on as 8 weeks old and get right through to the end. And ironically, those are the two breeds, the Labrador and Golden Retriever. And guide dogs tend to use the cross. Now, if you had no arms or something like that, you probably wouldn't want a Labrador putting keys in your mouth, because you'll be at the dentist having a new set of teeth put in, because they're so bullish and so in your face. But the Golden Retriever is quite sensitive. And I'll just give you a little anecdote of how something happened. I got up one morning here, because I go around the United Kingdom visiting hospitals, which are still full today, of injured servicemen who haven't gone home from Afghanistan. And when we recently went up to Withenshaw Hospital in Manchester, it was pre-COVID, and I went up, I got up at 3 o'clock in my village in Hampshire, taxi come at 4, we piled up to the airport, on a plane up to Manchester, got to Manchester, straight to the hospital, and next thing I know, the doctor said, oh, you don't have time for a break, you've got to go and meet the veterans now, because we're going to do ward rounds. So I did the veterans, and I thought, oh, I need to have a break now, because it'd been from 3 o'clock till sort of like 11 that I hadn't had a break. And they said, oh, we haven't got time for that, the children want to see you. I thought, oh God, what children? And they said, oh, you're expecting you down the children's ward. They're here, you're here with 2 assistance dogs, Rookie and EJ, and we've told them you're going to show them what the dogs do. So I thought, oh gosh. When I got down there, I thought, God, actually, I need to go to the little boys' room. It had been a long day. And I thought, right, children, just before we show you what the dog's to do, Rookie needs to go and have a toilet. And this little girl said, could I take him? And I thought, if you could taser someone, that was the opportunity, but you're not allowed to, politically incorrect. But I said, of course you can. And then she said, I need my slippers. And in that split second, she went, and he went to the cabinet, opened it open with his nose, found her slippers under a pile of stuff, and delivered dutifully both of them very gently for a Golden Retriever on the side of her bed. He'd clicked something I hadn't. He then sat there with his lead in his mouth, and she put her slippers on, slipped out of bed, and then got a walking frame out the end of her bed, and she put it down, clunk, shuffle, clunk, shuffle. And I thought, oh my God, she's going to be forever. But I said, where are you going? She said, to the fire exit, there's a children's garden. And I went, right, the magic words are better go now. I said, if a nurse has had a quiet cigarette and put the butt on the floor, he'll weigh against that as long as you say better go now, but be quick and come back. She was gone for 15 minutes. And when she come back, she was beaming, clunk, shuffle, clunk, shuffle. And I said, oh, where have you been? She said, oh, Rookie wanted to look round the garden. I'm thinking, no, he didn't. But she got on the bed, gave Rookie the slippers, he put them in the cabinet, he shut the door, she hooked the frame on, and everyone in the ward was crying. And being a naval man and not thinking, I said, oh, someone died. Don't do that in a children's ward, not funny. But her mother came up to me and said, no, that was the first time she'd walked since it'd been blown up in the Manchester bombing. She'd had 20 operations to save her leg, and she would not walk. She was protecting it, and there was no way occupational therapists could get her to walk. But that day, Rookie came into the ward. He was gentle, empathetic, understanding, and he got what's required of him. He could have whipped her off her feet at a rate of knots to go to the garden, but he didn't. He looked at her attentively, and that's the only way I can explain how these dogs come into our lives as veterans, that they don't look at you, they don't judge, they don't care, they just really get it. And Rookie is a very gentle dog. You know, he really gets what's required of him. And that's really important. So the Golden Retriever, quite sensitive, sometimes oversensitive. The Labrador, lovely bullish. You know, if I want pulling up at bed, I'm normally flying across the bedroom at 90 miles an hour because he's so willing to get me up, you know. But he's the latest one that is challenging. But, you know, equally in America, they use all breeds of dogs. There isn't a breed I don't think they use. But in England, it's more acceptable in public to have, you know, people will come up and cuddle Rookie, even if they're a little bit scared of a dog. If you come in with other breeds, they're a little bit cautious. So as a charity, we hope to introduce other breeds of dogs. But as a new organisation, we have to work with the statistics. And if the statistics are those are the most successful dogs, you know, we only have 2 squadrons a year now, 4 cadets in each squadron. We need to get 100% pass rate, because if we lose any, then that's a problem. But as we grow, when we've got sort of like 200 dogs out there, introducing a different breed as a pilot doesn't have any impact, not really. And then we can start introducing other dogs. And what we equally want, what helps make the partnership, is the person getting the dog loves that breed, you know, which is really important to us. So, you know, I think we're driven by statistics, but as you know, we'd love to introduce German Shepherds, because a lot of the guys like more blokey dogs. And, you know, if I was going to sell it, I said, you can have any car you want, but as long as it's a pink Lada and it's from a garage in Plymouth, that's not giving you a choice. But if we, we can get the right puppy parent who has German Shepherd experience, because they are a complicated dog, as is the Golden Retriever. But if you understand your breed, that becomes less complicated, and then you can get the dog through. But, we are investing in the first part of the training, probably £23,000, and we can't afford to get that wrong. So I hope that answers the question. But all dogs are capable of it. And certainly when I go to the International Association of Assistance Dogs in America, there is every breed. You look and you think, my God, how beautiful is that dog? And it's doing what it should do on the packet. But, every breed has good dogs one end, every breed has not so good dogs the other end, and you get that lovely group in the middle that are assistance dogs.
That's a great answer, Alan. It's really nice to hear that you're going to consider other breeds. Certainly as a vet, I couldn't agree more. You can get absolute angels in every kind of breed, and they're all capable of teaching us. Craig has asked, please can you tell us the length of the working life of one of the assistance dogs, and what does a typical retirement involve for them?
Well, what happens is, obviously we have 2 years training. Then the dog is, what we do, we invite the client down to meet all the dogs, and it really is the dog that selects the client. It's not the other way around. We'll have 5 dogs ready, bring the client in, he'll work all the dogs, and then we'll see the light go on in one. We invite them back to make sure that that's what happened and see if that's consistent. And then we invite the client on a 2-week residential course, and we do that so they have to depend on the dog. They have to learn dog, because servicemen and women might not have ever had a dog in their life. So in 2 weeks we've got to teach them everything dog, and then we've got to teach the dog their disability. All our dogs can work to the wheelchair, to crutches, to every disability you can think about, but then we will hone those eventual skills peculiar to the client. Then the dog goes out, and for the first 4 weeks we send an aftercare officer out. So we don't just place a dog, we make sure it's working. We take the dog to its first shop at its local shops, its first walk in the park, because you've got to remember the dog has only been placed with the person for such a short time. So when he lets the lead off, why should the dog stay with that person in the wheelchair? And seriously, if a dog wants to run away and you're in a wheelchair, it's only got to go up 2 steps in a park and you're damned. So we really do work it well. And then the aftercare visits go out to 6 months. When we come to the 8 years with the client stage, we really do start increasing the frequency of the visits to understand what the dog's doing, seeing how it's working for the client. And then we rush back to what we call the dog factory. It doesn't sound very glamorous, but we affectionately call it that. And we see what dogs we've got coming through. Now, some dog disabled people really don't need a high-level dog that can work for someone who's quadriplegic or tetraplegic. So we have different dogs and different gradings, but someone who needs a dog to pick something up, open doors, alert a family member of a problem, that doesn't necessarily have to be our highest grade dog. So we can rush back and do that. But as I say, when the dog comes to 8 years, we have a rule, it has to retire. Not 8 years 1 day, not 8 years 2 day, and 8 years that dog has to retire. And we have to have the successor dog in place. And that's really important to us. And as I say, if the client chooses not to have another dog, we will remove the jacket and they can keep the dog. And the dog would be quite happy doing basic indoor bits and pieces for them when they go out picking up things they've dropped. But what it won't have is that badge of honour, that jacket to go into shops and have public access, because it will be a retired assistance dog. But of where that has happened on our programme, because we're now up to successor dog level, we've had a dog have throat cancer, which was inoperable, we lost recently. We've had a dog that's had cancer of the liver, and we've had some difficult times, but we've been able to get successor dogs in there. But other dogs have retired, and the client has chose to keep them, and they've not had another dog. And that's really nice to know that the old dog are living out their life together. And if I was honest with you, when I had Endal and EJ, I really wanted to look after them in their old age, to pay them back what they did for me. And it would have been hard, but ironically both my dogs worked fantastically. And dare I say, the morning I lost EJ, he was still working for me, doing everything top notch. So it wasn't an illness or something like that, it was sudden, it was within hours. But I wouldn't have wanted him to suffer, but he worked right to the end. And that was what he wanted to do. That's what he was built for. I'm sure, I was sent one angel, lost him, was sent another angel, and now I've been sent a right little fugladite. But I miss him greatly. But I hope that answers. The welfare of the dog is really important to us. And if a dog has to come off the programme, then we spend a lot of time trying to home them. with the right families. And sometimes we don't place dogs with people with mental health issues or post-traumatic stress disorder. But if there is a family that could benefit from a dog that's highly trained, that isn't going to eat the iPhone, chew the electric cables, scratch the doors, or cause any issues, then I think that's quite important, that we can place a dog in there, but it won't be wearing a jacket, and it just will be a highly trained pet, put to a service family that could benefit from that would oil their day.
Oh, I think that was a great answer. I'm going to ask a quick one. As obviously a vet, what sort of happens with the vet care for the dogs? Do they have routine checkups? Or,
we have to, yeah. I mean, worming, because we're not members of Assistance Dogs International yet. You've got to be established and have so many partnerships out there. But we've set probably the highest standard you can. We even have poo charts. We can tell you when that puppy pooed 8 months ago, or the record of consistency. But yeah, they have to go to the vets regularly. We have local vets we use because puppy parents have to live within a 25-mile radius of our training centre. So we try and use one vet so there's consistency. We get the vets to come out. The dogs are eye tested, but not for breeding. We have a testing that is purely for, excuse me, that's my phone just going off the home phone. But we have eye testings for the dog to see if there's anything that's going to come into the dog later on in life that could stop them. And ironically, we have lost a dog. The dog was rehomed with a carer of a client, but the dog went blind. And that we look back for all the genetics. And again, having Labradors and Golden Retrievers, the history and the breed program, we've got records back to the very first 2 Labradors from the Buccleuch. So we can start seeing if there's hereditary problems, hip elbow scores, eyes and such like. And we can really pick up on that and avoid the particular strain, because we can't afford. Of Squadron 1, we looked at 160 puppies, all around the United Kingdom, and Red 4 come from Newcastle, and we're just north of Portsmouth. The Queen offered us one of her dogs, bless her, and we had to turn it down because it was 2 gun dog. Very difficult to do. You think we'll have to take it, but actually we couldn't afford to. But have a dog that is so driven that we could never control that need and desire. And we're not here to beat a way of life into dogs. We want them to be willing, loving, caring, and enjoying what they do. But sometimes the light goes out and we will retire. And we've just done one with another dog that has just stepped down now and has gone out to a serviceman who will benefit from having the dog in his life. So we try not to have any wastage. We have a dual role, but as I say, we're in our early stages, but we've had a few hiccups for a young charity. But we just look at it, that's the problem, let's come up with a solution.
That's fantastic. I don't think there are any more questions from what I can see. And Leon is jumping the gun and starting the thanks already, which I'm about to do. But I'm just going to read what Leon said, because it is lovely. He said, to you, Alan, you're an incredible human being. Thank you for everything and your team that your team have done and still have left to do. So inspirational. And I just like to thank you, Alan, for it's been such a privilege to hear such a personal and a moving account of your experience from your journey from 1991 to where you are now. It's been really humbling. Obviously, I see dogs every day, hundreds of dogs, but it's still been really humbling to hear how dogs teach us how to be humans, ironically, and also how to be better humans. It's been really impressive to hear all the work you've done setting up Hounds for Heroes, how important that work is, and just how incredible the dogs clearly are. If the Labradors are able to take a card payment, etc., I think I might employ some for my front of house team. I think it would definitely be a big draw, although I think at 53k I might be lower down on your list for the favourite dog. So thank you, Alan, for doing everything that you've done and for coming and talking to us. It's been an absolute privilege to hear you speak tonight. I've just got a few thank yous as well to those that have organised the talk. Alex Kingston, Chair of the Friends of Marble Hill and the Committee of the Friends of Marble Hill Park, who have organised the talk, sent out the tickets, and done a brilliant job of setting this up with Rachel at the beginning, and also Heather from King Street for making the Zoom work more or less as well as we could get it to. And thank you to the Friends of Marble Hill for looking after the green space. I'm very excited to hear the clock will work. Maybe it'll make more dogs show up on time for my appointments. A lot of people come straight from the park to me. And a final plug, which is for the 10th of June, which we will be running a dog show at Marble Hill, and hopefully we'll be able to look into raising some more money for Hound for Heroes and things like that at some stage for you, Alan. Thank you so much.
I would just like to say there was meant to be a video shown tonight, but I'm sure the web team will manage to give you the link. But if you go to YouTube, it is called The Secret Life of Dogs, Endal. And it's got a picture of a German Shepherd on the start of it. But I would just like to add, and I know you've done the final bit, but to me, it's quite important to feedback. All of you listening tonight, from me personally and from the heart, the message you are sending out to so many of us injured, disabled and traumatized servicemen and emergency services personnel, the message you are sending out is you care. And from where I sit, that's a powerful message to receive. So on behalf of so many, thank you for allowing me to share what we do. It's a real privilege, you know, and I will never underestimate that, but it's meant a lot to me tonight to have this opportunity. But you really are sending a very clear message to so many that you care. And from where I sit, as I say, that matters so much. And I salute you all from the heart. Thank you very, very much.
Well, we all salute you, Alan, for all that you've done. What an incredible talk. And I think, you know, kind of you've inspired us all. Thank you so much, Carmen, also for hosting and pulling this all together, and all the team behind the scenes. We all look forward to seeing you at Marble Hill on the 10th. Don't forget, the best way you can support Marble Hill is through English Heritage membership, but also through membership as being part of the Friends. It's £10 as a bargain as well. But also, please do support Hounds for Heroes. They're doing an incredible job supporting so many, and it's been a privilege to have you all with us. Have a lovely evening, and thank you again. Bye-bye.